city you burn, I'm gonna build one high.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and they can't stop the signal. This is still the Eve Universe show. How's it going, guys? What was that with the corpse? Man, so many different questions. Is there a link from to the video on the beginning? It's on my channel. It's if you go to my YouTube, which you should already be at. It should be like one of the like the popular videos. All right, so hold on. First of all, I wanted to address one of the questions that was in chat before this, and then I'll jump into kind of my news, and then we'll talk about stuff, and then hopefully I'll do some faction warfare, at least walk around in lowsec a little bit. Where am I? Oh, I was going to join faction warfare before this. Ah, shucks. We'll have to figure out something. Either way. So if you go to the Eve Universe page, which I have my window purpose. Hold on, let me actually. There we go. Responsive design for the win. All right, so if you go here, they're asking whether or not the Eve, the Empyrean Age, is on Universe, or do I feel like it should be? But if you go like, I think if you go like Elder Fleet. Yeah. So for instance, if you go to here and you go to the Elder Fleet, and the Elder War rather, like all of this is basically, well, at least here's Theodicy, which is the book Theodicy, or the short story, whatever you want to call it, novella, I think it is. And then this stuff here, this part of the story is the events of the Empyrean Age as it was from the perspective of the Elder Invasion, which is one of the threads from the story, right? So where was it? Yeah, here we go. See? Meanwhile, the battle raged above Mekios. 45 minutes after hostilities had been initiated by the Elder Fleets, and Mar forces started to withdraw from the conflict in the system. Thinking themselves victorious, Minmatar did not pursue, but instead continued to try and retrieve slaves from the battlefield below. Jamil's Abaddon then arrived on the scene, accompanied by the 12 Arch Guardians of the Citadel in Apocalypse-class battleships. The super weapons she had on board had activated, destroying the Elder Sorum's task force. The Elder Fleet's communications... the Elder Fleet's communications network went offline for troops on the surface below, and many who looked skyward witnessed the explosive ends to the campaign. Some Minmatar started killing themselves or the slaves they couldn't rescue in response. So yeah, I have no idea whether or not when I'm going to get my Twitch channel back. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit. So, like I said, it's not all on, it's not all of it on the Universe website, but a lot of the key details are in the articles of the various people, places, and things involved. All right, so I guess we'll start, or we'll also talk about the elephant in the room. So I don't know for sure what happened with Twitch. I received an email saying that I've had repeated serious infractions that they have talked to me about, and I searched through all my emails on both of the accounts I've ever received emails from them. There's nothing. I filed an appeal, haven't gotten anything else back, but to be totally honest, I had already been thinking about switching over to YouTube for a lot of different reasons. and the fact that I was like Twitch partner was kind of holding me there. Um, so I kind of see this as an opportunity to just go ahead and make the switch. So I mean, if I get unbanned, then that'd be great. I could have access to my all my Twitch Prime content that I've gotten over the years, and I can chat with people again. But I think that the streaming over here is actually a lot better. Exactly. Like I don't know, man. I do know that there's a growing, or there is at least a faction of people that really don't like me or what I have to say, and are spreading around information or rumors or trying to dox me or get me to dox myself or whatever. So who the hell knows what actually triggered this kind of thing? My stream looks better. Oh, that's good. I mean, the setup here is actually way better. So here's how this works now. I don't have as many emotes as I used to, but I do have some. Instead of subscribing, there's now member, which you can join, and there's 3 different tiers. All 3 tiers get like the member only videos, and so now I can make videos available for members only, like the archives. I don't have to wait 24 hours to make things live on YouTube anymore. But I can also do like member polls and stuff like that. And there's different tiers, so that way I can offer. I have different stuff, and I've been trying. Like one of the other things I've been wanting to do is kind of take a lot of the extra stuff seriously, if that makes sense. Hey, the chat started working. So like I I think we're gonna have our the merch store up soon, like within the next couple of days, if not today. Um, the member system over here, I think, is way cooler, and I'll be able to post messages to you guys and do other stuff like that, um, etc. So I'm not sure if the notification alerts will let me know if somebody like becomes a member during the whole thing. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, so if you think about it, like if you were a Twitch subscriber before, the equivalent now would be a member over here. And I think it should be that the emote tier, the basic tier is actually cheaper than the Twitch, like the normal tier one. Um, and the more members I get, the more emotes slots I unlock. So I've got a couple already. So I've gotten 5 emotes, etc. etc. All right, and obviously the emoji wall isn't. Maybe it's, I don't know. There seems to be some sort of weird lag with Streamlabs. So that is one of the weird things, that like Streamlabs is sees Twitch as my primary account. So I'm trying to figure out how to fix. There's still some little things to fix here and there, but overall, I think this is really cool. And I was kind of concerned about like, oh my gosh, how are people going to find me or whatever? But just looking at the numbers so far from this stream, I don't really worry about that so much anymore. It looks like people are finding this place just fine. So good to go. I think that that's all I had to say about that. Uh, I do want to give a thank you and shout out to Danica, who's in chat. She's a moderator, um, an inspiration that got me started in this whole path, and also been working hard to not only redo my logo, but also help me set up my store, because I'm a complete terrible person at getting things done. So, oh, there is a time. I got a little notification here that says now would be a good time to insert ads. Oh, I can just click it. I can click a button, and then you guys all have to watch something. We'll test that another time. How about that? I'm learning all the functions. All right. Streamlabs is ass. No. I use OBS as for streaming. Like my application is just standard OBS, but I've been using Streamlabs for like my emoji wall and the chat and the bot and all that kind of stuff. I have thought about switching over to Laughs in YouTube Premium. Hell yeah! Um, I, I, we're good. I understand and I appreciate it, but no, we're like I said, I want to test some of that stuff another time. We're going to do this one step at a time. There also is, of course, 2,000 Plex worth of giveaways I was supposed to do on Friday. I was thinking about doing them today, but I felt that that was kind of unfair. I was hoping to actually confer with some of the people that did the donating, but I think that what I'll do is just make it so that give it to commenters on videos over the next several videos or something like that. So that way we can, it can simultaneously go to the actual supporters and also help maybe drive some engagement, as it were. I don't know. We'll see. All right. By the way, what we're looking at here is relatively new formation. I don't think I've actually seen this one before today. We are in the Amignon system. So this is a Galente buildup. This is the Federation Navy Stronghold, I think it is, at the star. It's very impressive. It's probably the biggest, most sprawling of all of the sites that I've seen so far. Oh, also the build a gate competition. While it is almost certainly true that the gate will not fully be built, I still, want to. That was not the competition was not necessarily just about that. So my assumption is that tomorrow the event will end, which means you'll have until the Tuesday after to contract me your tickets, your ships, and any lost mails that you have. Link me any lost mails that you have to get counted for for the prize. All right. We have a few things to go over when it comes to Eve news. And then one of the things I would like to do as we're getting into faction warfare time, especially with a lot of newer players probably going to be coming, I really wanted to. People have been asking me a lot of questions about to make a video that's about like living in lowsec, moving in lowsec, how to do stuff in faction warfare. So I was hoping to maybe do some of that stuff too. Yeah, I am back online. Can't, like I said, can't stop the signal. So, let's go over some of these news items, and then we'll talk a little bit about faction warfare and lowsec and how to fly. Maybe we'll see. Frost, the TLDRs, we're not 100% sure. All right. Shh. Okay, so let's see. Where's the thing? All right. So, first things first. We're going to talk about changes to security status and abyssal filaments. This was something that we saw on Sissy a few days prior. Started to piece together what was going on from like strings, the text and stuff like that from various different things. But now we have a dev blog for it. and it outlines the changes, and we'll just go over it, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts about it. So, security conscious capsuleers. As part of the Uprising expansion, we are making some important changes that will largely affect players in HiSec. The goal of these designs is to address the following issues. 1. Griefing of new players and low-value targets. 2. Risk versus reward dynamics of abyssal dead space filaments. And 3. Shortage of legitimate player targets in high-security space. To achieve these goals, we are introducing the following new restrictions and limitations. 1. Limit tethering for players with low security status in HiSec. 2. Docking restrictions for outlaws in high-security space. 3. Changing the security status settings for alpha accounts and removing the option to disable safety red. And 4, updated rule set for abyssal dead space filament activation. So, it is important to distinguish between HiSec ganking and griefing. This is key. I love the fact that this is how they come out the gate, right? Because this is something that has been going on and on. Now, this argument about ganking and stuff is obviously as old as Eve, basically. But the specific instance of it, we've seen this crop up, especially recently, with Hateless and the whole Orcageddon and all of that shenanigans. Even have a few videos about it now, again on the channel from a few weeks ago. You can check them out. But CCP comes out the gate and says, it is important to distinguish between HiSec ganking and griefing. HiSec ganking is a valid and necessary playstyle. Valid and necessary playstyle, okay? Let's stop arguing about that. Where players will suicide gank high-value targets and offset their loss of their ships from the loot and the salvage gained from their target. So again, and we've been over this many, many times, the reason why this is valid and necessary is because it functions as a counter pressure against simply solving all of your HiSec issues with more ISK, right? Without ganking, there is absolutely zero reason to go for additional defensive functions or to maybe not go with the absolute most expensive blinged out option that you possibly have, right? It's not just a matter of it costs a lot to bling out your paladin with all purples. If you do that, you become a high value target, and therefore there's an encouragement to not do so. Or if you're going to do so, you have to take measures to protect yourself, right? That's the whole point. And the reason why this is necessary is because everybody's working in the same market, everybody's living in the same game. On some level, there's a bit of a competitive nature to everything. And therefore, the capabilities of everyone else within your same field impacts you, right? So as a miner, if everyone else can mine 3 times as much as you, then your mining is worth less because they can sell their efforts for less for the same amount of work because or for the same amount of resources because it took them significantly less work to actually make it happen, right? And therefore, the more people that have those, it's like Rorqual, Reign of the Rorqual, right? Well, likewise in mission running, right? If the standard is fully blinged out in purples, then there's no reason, or then everyone else is having to measure their ISK generation capability to that, right? Maybe not necessarily competing in the same stuff, although there is stuff in the LP store, but just competing as players in the ISK generation world, right? Without that threat, then there is no counter pressure. So it's a very important aspect of the game. Griefing, on the other hand, is where a player suicide ganks low-value targets. I find this very interesting, and I wonder whether or not CCP plans on holding on to this definition as per their EULA, right? Because griefing is against the rule. Well, no, harassment's against the rules. And there's a difference between griefing and harassment. Tracking. Griefing, on the other hand, is where suicide gank low value targets, often new players, using relatively cheap ships, allowing them to absorb the losses with very few consequences. For a new player, ganking is very punishing, as they lose their primary tool for money making and often lack the fund to immediately replace their losses. This is where things get complicated, because it's really difficult to mix it's really easy. Sorry, it's really difficult to separate, not mix, out people that are ganking as a griefing mechanic and people that are ganking because they're trying to do territory control, right? Interdiction, as it were, right? I suppose that this would have to be part of the larger thing. You know, if I go around and I gank every venture I see, I'm probably griefing. But if I go around and gank everybody who comes to a specific asteroid belt, then I'm defending my territory, right? I think that that's a pretty clear distinction. Under the current mechanics, when players participate in such activities, their security status is reduced. Once a player's security status falls below certain thresholds, they will be hunted by the Empire Police when entering high security system. Any cloaking devices fitted to their ship will also be disabled based on the same criteria, so they cannot cloak to avoid faction police. So I found this really funny because so many people reacted to this like this was the change. They're describing the way it is right now. So this idea that you can't cloak in systems, I believe that this is saying that it's true right now. I know it's true in faction warfare, right? Like if I'm in Galente faction warfare and I run into an Amar system and I try to cloak, it'll tell me no. If a player's security status falls below -5, the player becomes an outlaw, allowing anyone to attack them without Concord interference. Hey, 07. So, now we get to go to the changes. However, some players have found a way to bypass this by placing structures next to gates and then tethering to them. Empire faction police will not attack players when tethered, regardless of security status, meaning that other players have no meaningful way to disrupt these tethered. Additionally, regardless of security status, players can dock anywhere to reship or hide from would-be attackers. To ensure the security status is significant and players face proper repercussions for a negative security status, we are making the following changes to docking and tethering for pilots with a low security status. These match the current rules for faction police standings. So at security status -2, you cannot do it in 1.0, 2.5 is 9, all the way down to 4.5, which is 0.5 systems. And yes, this is consistent with, like, if your security status is 2, then the faction police will begin attacking you in 1.0 systems. So this is also preventing you from being able to tether. I think that one of the things about this, though, is that I think that this would mean that you would have to make it so that faction warfare doesn't tether too, right? Because, like, they have the exact same problem where the Navy can't attack them. Now, when I think about these kinds of balance issues, the way I like to think about it is, does this change things? Does this modify things more than Citadels, right? In other words, like, Citadels made a lot of changes, and so there's a certain amount of what's going on with CCP where they are tweaking, pulling back, iterating on a lot of the changes that came during that Citadels era. And so when it looks to these kinds of things, are they just undoing the damage of a bad or undoing a bad piece of this of the implementation of upwell structures and beyond, or is this a new restriction? In other words, if we wound back to 2014, would this change have even meant anything? And so far, the answer is no. Obviously, there was no tethering before. The only equivalent would be like if you had a pos stick. But you can't really have a pos stick on grid with a gate, and there's other considerations when it comes to having a pos stick in high sec. So no, everyone who ganked prior to the Citadel's expansion didn't require tether. So asking you to not have tether does not seem unreasonable to me so far. It does make lowsec security loss a bit more impactful, but again, it doesn't do anything more than revert some of the upwell changes, right? There were people that played this game for over a decade with the exact same conditions that with living in lowsec and having to deal with not being able to tether in highsec at all because there's nowhere to tether. As players with negative security status can no longer tether, they'll be vulnerable, blah, blah, blah. Docking restrictions or outlaws. Also, this isn't going to necessarily protect very many people from things because, like, a lot of the places that you think of as being ganking are 0.5 systems. And keeping your security status above 4.5 is actually pretty damn cheap. So, like, if you think that this is going to prevent people from ganking in Uedama or make it more complicated or making it that much more of a pain in the butt, so it'll make Uedama safer, you're probably wrong. Because again, for over a decade, people managed to figure out how to do it without tethering. And they're still probably going to be able to tether for the most part. All right. Docking restrictions or outlaws in high security space. In addition to being attacked by Empire faction police, players with security status -5 and below will no longer be allowed to dock in any structure or station in high security space while piloting a ship. Outlaw pilots and capsules, however, will be able to dock and not be attacked by the Empire faction police. Oh, hold on. It's worth noting, though. Yeah, okay, that's true. They never potted. That they can still be attacked by other players. Outlaws will be able to undock in a ship, but once undocked will be refused docking permission. Additional limitations for alphas. Yeah, hold on. So that is a new change. Let's see. Yeah, so this is a new change, right? The idea that you can't dock in your ship as a criminal or as an outlaw is very much new. A few thoughts on that. One, they should absolutely allow shuttles to be an exception, right? Two, again, this doesn't stop ganking. People keep on like it's weird because even in the beginning they say that their whole thing is where was it? Yeah, if for the goal of griefing of new players and low value targets and well, hold on. Shoot, what did they say? Either way, my point is that if your issue is their ability to operate, if what is the docking restrictions for outlaws in high security space? Which of these three is it designed to solve? Because it doesn't solve any of them. Because if somebody is griefing, then they're undocking to suicide gank. They're not going to dock back up in a pod. Somebody even said in the forums, it was like, that's fine. You shouldn't be docking back up in your ship anyways. And like, yeah, if you're a criminal in highsec, or sorry, an outlaw in highsec, yeah, just accept the fact that once you undock, you're undocked until you die. Now, there is a funny thing about the fact that you can't dock in your own structures unless you're in a pod, which is sort of bizarre. But I mean, ultimately, I don't know on the one hand, I don't know if that's a huge ask for people. Like, I think it might be perfectly fine. People have been asking for this kind of change, or changes in this world for as long as I've been playing the game. Um, and it seems pretty fair. I just don't understand exactly the point. Um, I guess it's so that outlaws can't smuggle things around, but let's listen to that sentence again, shall we? I think it's because that way outlaws can't smuggle things around. What? Like, if you put it that way, it even makes less sense. So I'm not saying that this is a bad change. I'm not saying that this is a game breaking change. I don't like it for several reasons. I don't get it. I don't want this one. This isn't working for me necessarily. Um let's see. Just shield new players. The problem with shielding new players is that it's like it's difficult to do that without giving other players an ability to exploit that fact. You could do it, I'm sure, but either way. Like I think that this is a theoretically okay change for outlaws, except for the whole like why not shuttles and other like non-weapons. I don't know, it's so weird. But I just don't feel like it addresses anywhere close to what they were looking to address. The tethering one, honestly, I think does more to address it. Travel interceptors, shuttles are the new travel interceptors, more or less, right? Because interceptors no longer have built-in interdiction, but shuttles do. All right, let's keep going. Now, also additional limitations for alpha pilots and high sec. By introducing these changes, the consequences for ganking have become more severe. To avoid players attempting to work around these new rules using alpha clones, we are preemptively removing the ability for alpha clones to disable safety while in high security space. They will be able to enable partial safety in high sec and disable safety completely in other areas of space. So what they're saying here is that there's this turnover. One of the ways to deal with standings loss is to just have a turnover, right? Like when you burn out your character's standings, you just make a new character. It doesn't take very long to do a catalyst. If you make a new character with with the buddy code, then you get 1,000,000 SP. You can basically get back into a catalyst instantly. If the idea is that as they make standings loss more impactful, which was the goal, then that will encourage people to simply circumvent it by having multiple accounts rather than, um, actually address it in universe within the rules, right? Through like tags or, whatever. So what they're trying to do is prevent people from exploiting the alpha system from just basically creating unlimited accounts. This, oddly enough, is not. This also doesn't change anything right now. For the most part, alpha groups aren't used for ganking. Um, Alphas cannot be multi-boxing. I know there's definitely people that'll be like, oh, but you know, people multi-box all the time, even or people multi-box alphas all the time. You can just use a VPN. First of all, that's not as simple as you would think, and second of all, CCP does ban bots, and having bot-like behavior in a place that's extremely visible, almost surely going to get you reported. And all of the accounts being alpha makes acting upon you and your accounts and your IP significantly easier for CCP. So, yeah, alphas absolutely have things strong enough to gank. But so like it would be a fleet of people, which would be cool. Like, I mean, go back to the way ganking kind of used to be, where it was actually a team of people as opposed to a single person multi-boxing. But again, I think that the whole point is that if alpha clones could be used for ganking, then that makes it so that the standing system basically doesn't mean anything. So yeah, and to that end, it's also worth noting that alphas can absolutely still suspect bait. They can go suspect. They can attack suspects. They can attack criminals. They can attack outlaws. So it's not a full thing. But there's a final piece to this, which is that one of the things I thought about is that Eve is a game about deception. And so I suspect that there's a certain amount of this that makes it so that now alphas can't accidentally shut off their safety as well, right? Like, oh, what's this do? And then not remember what it did, and then accidentally concord themselves and not understand what happened, right? So I think overall it's fine. Let them go to lowsec, right? And it also says that they can't disable it while in high security space. So you can have it disabled in lowsec. You can still pod people and all that stuff. I assume that when you go back into high sec, it just automatically switches it back to safety yellow, basically. So there you go. Yes, you can absolutely do a gank catalyst with the million ISK or SP code. We know that for a fact. You can also do the gank Gnosis if you're really feeling ballsy. You could probably get away with a Talos, honestly. Million SP is a lot of SP. But now they can't join MPSI fleets. Why can't they join MPSI fleets? Are there MPSI fleets going around in high sec? I know, right? Nth dimensional. That's a fucking good point. That is an amazing point. And if they can switch my settings automatically, then you should make it so that we can set our safety per security band. I love it. I want my security stat. I want my safety red in low sec and green in high sec, and we're good to go. Yes, but they don't need to be green. They can go yellow, and they can yeet with yellow. They only can't go red. They can't high sec gank. Restrictions on abyssals. Okay, so this would be the other side of the coin, right? Restrictions on abyssals in high security space. We are removing the ability for abyssal filaments to be activated in 1.0 and 0.9 systems. This means that it will be no longer possible to run any abyss in JITA or any of the other trade hubs, besides Heck, of course. To be clear, this only applies to abyssal filaments. Signal noise filaments, Postrum filaments, and proving ground filaments will remain unchanged. This immediately removes several safety elements from the abyssal runners. First, they can now be disrupted when leaving the abyssal encounter and prevented from immediately escaping by entering a new abyssal encounter. That's the thing that I've talked about before, right? Second, this will increase the amount of travel for abyssal runners overall, offering more opportunities for other players to attack them as they will be high value targets. So this actually has another big advantage, in my opinion. So first of all, hallelujah. You know, taking it from all 1.0 systems is absolutely fine. I said bare minimum it needed to be trade hubs. 1.0 is fine. 0.9 is okay. Full disclosure, for those of you who don't remember, weren't looking at the time or whatever, my suggestion was to restrict Abyss to 0.5. Okay, so this is significantly less restrictive than I had suggested. But at the bare minimum, this was one of the things I thought of. Having it be restricted by 1.0 probably was a really good option to balance effectiveness and the amount of work it would take to implement, right? To simply say it can't be done on 1.0 would probably be easier than to say these certain systems or trade hubs or whatever. And that just makes sense. the other thing about this is they're kind of there's a piece to this that they are touching on here, but not fully, which is that idea of having to move, right? So this isn't just a matter of them being able to be killed on their way to and from or whatever. The whole point here is that it's one of those game design things where the challenge spurs the engagement, right? In other words, nobody, if given the choice between having it be perfectly fine to run the abyss in high sec or in Jita and requiring the logistics to move somewhere else, obviously most people would choose to stick with the easier option, right? However, the whole idea once that's cut off, once the option of being able to do it in Jita is shut down, then you actually have to answer the question of where are you going to go? You now have to move. Therefore, how you actually deal with this is a real question now. Do you uh, just go a couple jumps over because you want to still be as close as possible, and don't care? Does this give you the excuse to want to go somewhere totally different since you have to move anyways? Does this have to make you have to move to a lower security band depending on which place that you want to be? Now the idea of like staking out where you want to do this stuff and how you want to execute it and how you want to supply your operation is a meaningful thing, as opposed to a voluntary restriction that you're putting onto yourself because you could just do it in Jita, right? So yeah, and I think that basically that allows us to cheat ourselves of some of the potential in the game, because that's EVE Online is just about solving problems, right? So you know, having that be a thing, I think is totally fine. Now, given what they did as a change, I think it actually would have made sense for Tier 0 to be able to rerun it in 1.0. Just so that way a brand new person who's just learning the Abyss can get started by like docking up, buying a fit, going out and running it, right? Um, yeah, Marcus, there are high sex islands with 0.5 systems, but that's my point. Like all of this already existed, but that texture wasn't relevant because the simple solution was the simple solution. So now there's a real operation involved. And by the way, as a point of note, once you have your stuff set up, what you have to bring to and from market is relatively small. Filaments don't take up much space. Mutaplasmids don't take up much space. Skill books don't take up much space. And red loot can be turned into any Concord station. You shouldn't be selling it in Jita anyways. So you just figure out where your red loot drop-off point is, and you're good to go, right? It doesn't take very much at all to keep an operation running. The most bulky thing is like your ammo, right? Which you could, if you really wanted to go like fucking off the grid, you can build your own ammo, right? You could run missions and be able to turn your own ammo into faction ammo if you wanted to. Build your own faction drones if you want to. There's all kinds of different ideas. I spent like a little while over the weekend with a couple of people just looking at different options to see which systems were good to be for an abyssal runner, for what reasons. And the 0.5, yeah, the heck trade, that is actually one of the questions that I have, is that are people going to just start running the abyss in heck? The thing is that the reason why it was so dangerous, or why it was a big problem, is that people couldn't anchor structures or mobile depots in trade hubs. So there is nothing to prevent you from being able to just jump right back into the abyss again, which is what they were referring to there. That isn't a problem in Heck. So running the abyss in Heck would be the same as running it in any other 0.5 system. It's just now basically everything that made running the abyss in Jita a bad idea before that change happened is like 6 times as true in Heck, right? Because it's a 0.5 system. So now, if you want to gank abyssal runners, why wander? Just undock in Heck, throw out your combat probes, and see if you can find a trace. Ah. IMO CCP needs to add an additional pop-up when people undock for the first time saying that you're consenting to PvP. I think that the tutorial suggests something to that effect when you're undocking. They straight up say, like, anyone can engage you after that or whatever. Man, the chat widget is just spazzing out, but I think that the chat on the side should be good because that's how YouTube works. No, well, in this case, they say it to you because Aura speaks out loud. I could be wrong. I I'm just going to go ahead and say I strongly suggest not using Heck as your abyss running hub. All right. Added so on top of the ban in 1.0 and 0.9, we have the added suspect flag for high tier abyssals based on security. So in 0.8 systems, T4, so basically you can do T3 and below in 0.8 systems safely without a suspect flag. And tier 4 and above will give you a suspect flag. In 0.7, then only T5, T6, and then in 0.6, then T6. So I was trying to think of like a fun math way to look at it, but no. So in 0.6, you can do T6 will still give you a suspect flag. So in order to do no suspect flags, you have to be in a 0.5 system. That's part of what we were just talking about as far as finding the correct system to run in. Aura does have sound, or Eve does have sound. And in fact, there's actually a really cool sound update coming in Eve with the turrets. Anyway, this allows for new and less skilled players to be able to run tier 0 and tier 3 abyss sites in the relative safety of 0.8 space. The lack of suspect flag plus the consequences of low security status means that you're less likely to be targeted by other players, as they won't be considered a high value target. Tier 4 and tier 6 can be ran in 0.8 system. Sorry, tier 4 to tier 6 can be run in can be run in 0.8 systems. However, doing so will result in a suspect flag on exit. This means that players can still run the higher tier abyssals, but will have to choose between exiting an encounter with a suspect flag or risk moving to a lower security system. We believe that these changes to security status and abyssal encounters will result in better game for all, creating more legitimate PvP targets in high security space while reducing low value ganking and increasing risk to abyss runners. I agree with that overall with this blog. What's funny is that what that means is that 0.5 systems will have a bunch of abyss runners running in them, but also they what was I going to say? Oh, right. So the people who move to the 0.5 systems are the ones who need to move to the 0.5 systems. So more of the abyssal traces found in 0.5 systems will be T6 abyss traces, because if you're running T4 abyss, you would just run it in a 0.8 system, right? So, or tier, at least a 0.7 system, sorry. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. And it might be worth running a higher tier abyss in a higher security system, just because everyone's going to assume that you're running a lower tier abyss, and then you pop out with a suspect flag and go dock up. Yeah. If you undock, you consent to PvP. That's absolutely correct. Right. The bulkiest thing is your ships. So that's why I was saying, like, once you get in position and set up, then maintenance is not that difficult. Um, what? Did it used to be different? How? You can gank anywhere. You've always been able to attack anyone anywhere. I feel like there's a conversation that I kind of missed. Hold on. By the way, if you want to guarantee I see your stuff, super chats are now a thing. I don't know what that means, but apparently that means something to me. So if your argument is that there should be absolute security somewhere in HiSec, I would like to go back up to the top here where it says um, it is important to be grief. Yeah, HiSec ganking is a valid and necessary play style. Okay, so if there was an area of space that was 100% safe, then that valid and necessary play style would be disrupted. Sissy's live again. Excellent. I have several videos about ganking, why it's important, how to defend yourself, etc. I even think I put them in a playlist or something somewhere. Oh no, it was on a forum post on the Eve forums. So I would recommend you check those out, and then I'm open to talking to you about it if you still disagree. Oh, Sissy isn't live. Okay, well. Now it is worth noting that the other thing this does, the player can come like you can have an orca with your abyss trace, and then if somebody comes to gank your ship, you just flip your ship into the orca and flip into a different ship that's like stored in the orca. Now that doesn't get rid of your suspect flag. Um, but it does get rid of like the suspect flag doesn't transfer to the orca, so the ship is safe. Your pod isn't, but if what you flip out is something like a super tanked, I don't know, bustard or something like that. I don't know how the timers go with when it comes to like when they can lock you up or whatever. But the whole point is that if you can then get off grid with your pod, which even if you get a sacrificial ship, then you can still warp off with your pod as soon as the ship is blown up. Um, and then you're safe. You can prevent the gank from happening. They then have to gank the Orca, which is a significantly more complicated system. What's up with Vard and the other systems? I was hoping somebody could maybe give me some news about that. I don't know what their status is at the exact moment. But we were going to talk about that a little bit next. I mean, I'll put it this way. I understand that you may disagree and think that high sec should be a different way, but you can disagree with a lot of different video games and their mechanics. That doesn't change the game. It just means that you have to make a decision about whether or not that's the game for you, right? Like, man, I really wish Dark Souls wasn't so punishing when I died, right? Like, I mean, sure, but it's not Dark Souls anymore. Hey, I think that's a thing. Is that a thing? I'm not sure what that even means anymore. What is a subscription? Is that just a channel subscription? I don't know. Still getting used to all this. Um, but yeah, no. Ganking does increase retention, as it turns out. Um, but also, the thing is that for the most part, a newer player should really aren't doing anything or in anything that should be a high ganking target outside of like a mining ship. Um, which I mean, whatever. But for the most part, I just recommend moving out of Jita and you'll be, or sorry, Caldari space and you'll be fine. Cargo weight should be added to the ship weight for advanced bumping. Yeah, except for there seems to be like, so TARDIS technology is basically the standard in Eve. What was that? What? Oh no, my alert box. Uh, oh, Agnar Knee 5G, thanks for the subscription. There's no effect if you turn off non-consent in PvP in high sec. If you look at the overall point of view, uh, that is just wrong. As I said, I mean, like I even explained it earlier about the counter pressure. So we're just going to move on that one. No, it's bigger on the inside. If you ever put a container inside of another container, it says you can't put a plank generator inside of another plank generator. It's because like Eve Online just like the Eve universe just has the ability to create kind of like pocket spaces. Um, and that's just standard. Yeah, the Minotaur have reached their faction goal and have full control over both systems, but also the Amara gained their succeeded in their goal and own the system. It's hard to say what's going to actually happen. You can put a command ship in an Orca. Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess that's no because you're suspect, so there's no Concord coming, right? So you're gonna want to have something that's like super tanky, but also potentially able to go away. Hey, there we go. That's what that looks like. Thank you, Ardenika. You get all those emotes and the little cool badge. All right. My point of view affects my judgment. No, my knowledge of the game design of Eve Online affects my judgment. Didn't I didn't come to Eve Online with an expectation of what Eve Online was. Eve Online taught me what it was, and I learned it. Um, What if you shoot the camping gankers with the ibis to trigger Concord? If they kill you, will Concord still come after 30? If you attack the camping gankers with an ibis, you would get concorded because they don't have any flags. If you're the one with the suspect flag, then they can attack you without any repercussions, except for from you. That's the whole point. You have a suspect flag from being in the abyss. Therefore, they're perfectly legal to attack you. And so attacking them with an alt would be a criminal action by you. If you're talking about pre-2011 or around 2011, I've got hey, there's the notification. 3 words for you. Galente ice interdiction. So many people are going to get killed because they don't know these mechanics. The Abyss. I mean, I suspect that it's not going to let you activate the Abyss filaments without setting your safety to yellow, right? You shouldn't be able to do anything that can give you a suspect flag without setting your safety to yellow. So what's going to happen is they're going to undock their Gila, warp to their safe, activate, and see that they can't activate it in Jita. All right. Let's see. Next topic. We'll see. Well, again, like, it's a matter of making sure that they can't make the mistake, right? And then they go to, you know what? Everybody's got to learn the mechanics somehow, right? Period. Yeah. Well, a lot of people die to learn their lessons in Eve. Thank you for that subscription, Piombo65. All right. A little bit of news. Was going to go over this on Friday, but last week we've been covering the upcoming event in Turner 1. I put up on my video of it happening, and we had a little joke video, which I thought was really clever. But aftermath of Turner 1. Last week, scientists had been monitoring the progress of the Imperial prototype stellar transmuter in Turner system and raised the alarm that the star could reach a terminal phase around 1700 on New Eden Standard Time on 2nd of November, as covered in the news article in the most recent episode of The Scope. Planetary industry workers on Turner 1 were evacuated from the planet, and capsuleers were warned to proceed with caution upon entering the system, particularly around the projected terminal phase. As warning signs escalated, capsuleers from across the star cluster watched with concern. I don't know if concern is the correct word. Consequently, the scientists' fear were well-founded in their right to raise their alarm. At 1700 New Eden Standard Time on 2nd of November, the planet closest to Turner was scorched beyond recognition after being hit with an intense radiation and superheated plasma from the star, as covered on CCP TV. I don't know why they... Oh, because this is the... Yeah, this is the out-of-universe blog. They should have said ACN, in my opinion. But no, I get it. Despite the warning and risks, a large number of capsuleers deliberately placed their ships and crews within the system to witness what would happen when the terminal phase was reached. Unsurprisingly, in the aftermath of the explosion, these ships took heavy damage. Mere seconds after the blast, capsuleers detected each other's vulnerabilities and turned ferociously on one another, further adding to the death toll of this already tragic day. The system of Turner has been permanently affected by the event. Aside from the destruction, the whole environment has undergone a change, and for reason unknown, a large number of wormhole connections have spontaneously opened up. Luckily, many of the planet's settlers were successfully evacuated from the surface. However, the nomadic tribes faithful to Tanakh Gufan, the Absolver, who remained on Turner 1 to witness the event, now appear to be missing. So far, there appears to be no known survivors from the surface of the planet. So, yeah. Following the catastrophe, the question remains whether these experiments involving the stellar transmuter will continue or be shut down. Many believe that it's highly unlikely that the Mimitar Republic is willing to pay the price for further catastrophic events in Turner. So, Turner blew up. It looks like the other two stars have begun to destabilize. I would have expected them to have entered into a terminal phase by now, but obviously it doesn't seem like they have yet. Now, one of the things that this reminds me of, right? The fact that they had Triglavian masks and everything keys me as being kind of a questionable thing, right? Like, these guys are obviously a little bit more important than somebody that you're just going to blow up in 5 days, I would like to think. So here's my tinfoil for you, okay? Let's do a little search real quick. We go here and we look up molecular. Is this going to have it? Is it molecular? Let me go look it up. Yeah. In other news, Triglavian raiding party depopulates colonial sediments of Esmin 3. Report town stripped of biological matter on a molecular level. And then this one says, authorities mystified as population of Esmis 3 town discovered in Triglavian environmental facility in Goynard 2. The Scope Galactic Hour with Rex Gloriax has exclusively revealed that the population of the town of New Concept on Esmis 3 are alive and apparently reasonably well after detecting strange signals. Stevie Pod 1, thank you for that. After detecting strange signals emanating from the storm world of Goynard 2, Concord Aegis Division discovered a bizarre environment maintained on the rocky surface of the inhospitable planet. With the heavily protected environment were the population of New Concept Colony, so recently believed to have been reduced to their constituent molecules by a Triglavian raid on the 8th of March. So, I'm still not beyond the idea that this population was rescued just prior to just as the explosion is going off. Yeah, that's true. People dying on patch day for any reason usually is never not going to be funny. All right. And there was a scope video about this.
The details of the disaster following the blast from the Star of Turner on November 2nd are still emerging in its aftermath. Closest to the star was the Imperial prototype stellar transmuter, understood to have destabilized the star through its experimental operations. A skeleton crew of Amar volunteers stayed aboard the transmuter, and attempts to avert catastrophe continued until the very last moments.
I'm really hoping, by the way, that this guy back down here is not Scott Manley. Just throwing that out there.
Transmuter, and attempts to avert catastrophe continued until the very last moments, as it became clear that all hope was lost. And
what's wrong with the current bounty system? as in the one that doesn't exist?
The terminal phase was imminent. Marshal Zirkosh addressed the transmuter crew, thanking them for their devotion and service to the Empire, before commending their souls to God. At 1700 hours, the Star of Turner entered its so-called terminal phase of instability, and the transmuter ceased to exist. The destruction of several capsuleer structures close to the star swiftly followed. Orbiting high above the barren planet of Turner 1 is the Republic Parliament Station, which has played a crucial role in the combined efforts of Empire and Capsuleer corporations to successfully evacuate the population of Turner 1. At the
When this is all over, one of the facts that I want from FanFest is exactly how many clones was destroyed when they shut down the clone bay in Turner 1 station to not bring it back up again.
time of the terminal event, only a handful of crew remained aboard the station, maintaining docking and traffic operations to ensure that the maximum number of refugees could escape. Ahead of the blast, the station's spare shield generators and power had been diverted to reinforce the structure. Unfortunately, the hastily rigged enhancements did not deflect all radiation and supercharged particles, with many systems wrecked and secondary explosions and fires breaking out. Regardless, the shielding did save most of those who sheltered in the core of the station, which remained structurally sound despite the severe damage to peripheral superstructures. The worst effects by far were felt on the surface of Turner 1. As the planet closest to the star, it was clear that this barren world would be hit by any extreme energy burst, making its evacuation a top priority. Industry workers and many settlers were lifted off to safety, with only those refusing help remaining on the planet. Principal among those remaining behind were the nomadic Minmatar clans faithfully following the teachings of Tanak Gufran, the Absolver. In a final...
One more time, I do want to stress that this guy's name, who they've now repeatedly mentioned over the last, week, was never, I don't think he's ever been mentioned before this. He's a brand new character. They presumably introduced him just to kill him, which is sort of weird.
Bizarre broadcast from the surface of Turner 1, the Absolver encouraged his followers to embrace the spiritual forces about to transform the system. Turner 1 has been scorched beyond recognition by the effects of the intense radiation burst and bombardment by a wave of supercharged plasma from the star. So far, there are no known survivors from the surface of the planet. Despite many warnings as to the risks, a large number of Capsuleers placed their ships and crews at serious risk to witness what promised to be an extraordinary event.
He's in the blast, for sure, in that last frame. But my point is that we're not 100% sure what's happening in that last frame. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, man. It just seems weird to me. Let's just put it this way. From a storytelling point of view, discovering that this population was actually like brought into the Triglavian collective matches what Tanak said and enters a new story beat that functions as a catalyst for things, right? So one of the questions is, are the Triglavians good guys or bad guys, as it were, right? Like, there are supporters of the Triglavians. There are people that believe that the Triglavians have a better point than the Empires do. We have people like the Kybernauts and what's his name? The Integral leader. Foucault. Seriatim Foucault. We got that whole group. So this idea of like, are the Triglavians actually doing bad things to these people? And I think that this population could potentially add an interesting dynamic to that option. Does that make sense?
Unsurprisingly, these ships took heavy damage from the radiation burst, with shields and armor systems collapsing in seconds, leaving damaged hulls totally exposed. A number of ships were destroyed when rival capsuleers exploited these moments of extreme vulnerability to wreak destruction on one another. The chaotic struggle in space added to the death toll of this already tragic day. It is now becoming apparent that the Turner system has been permanently affected by the extreme stellar event. The widespread destruction
If you've not seen the Turner star now, it is really cool looking.
is almost superficial on an astronomical scale, with the local space-time environment being profoundly altered, leading to very high unstable wormhole activity. For its part, the Amar Empire has declared its Stellar Transmuter research program a success, despite the extraordinary demise of its Turner operations. Ominously, the Empire appears confident it has gathered all the data required to take their exploitation of the technology forward to the next stage of development. In the aftermath of the Turner tragedy, attention is turned to the stellar transmuters in Egmar and Vard, currently under the control of Minmatar forces. The urgent question remains whether the Republic is willing to continue experimental operations or attempt to shut them down.
That clip in the scope video, I think, is really important. Just if for no other reason than to confirm that this is happening due to the explicit instructions and guidance of the Empress Katniss I.
This is Alton Havery reporting for the Scope.
And then, let's see, do they have the... No, they don't. If you... They post the ticker on the Eve Universe website, usually. If not on the actual video. So, demonstrations and protests over Turner incident continue in Federation of Republics. Samatar Malatu Shakur granted expanded emergency powers by Tribal Council. Aftermath of extreme stellar event in Turner still unstable, according to scientists. Fate of the Absolver and his followers in Nomadic clan in Turner 1 unknown. Imperial Chancellor of the Amar Empire reportedly mediating in dispute between MIO and Tetramon Order. So that's Ministry of Internal Order and Tetramon Order, which makes sense. They don't really like each other. Unstable wormholes actively fluctuating while local spacetime oscillates towards equilibrium. This actually plays into one of my, or part of my theory about gravity and wormholes. Galente academics in Hydeon expelled from Amar Empire by order of Lord Aslan Ilkosh. That's crazy. I wonder why these I'll need to look into whether or not these academics triggered something. Komatar Alec Baralsh orders secondary planetary defenses on Matar activated with tertiary on standby. Makes sense. Edencom's Provost Marshal Cassia Valkanir reiterates call for diplomatic solution to transmuter crisis. Amar Ministry of War transfers 5 capital ship groups to Tash Murkon military circuit. This is important. So this is why I keep on making the joke, right? Like, it's all fun and games until Tash Murkon invades Stain. Tash Murkon is the Empress's family. She's really set it up things that some of her rivals within the Empire has been given a lot of territory and therefore a lot of work. And that, how do I, no! Is that already taken care of? Must already be taken care of. All right. So more military support on Tash Murkon. We're going to have to look into where all her territory is, or their territory is, but it should be pretty... It's a relatively small territory compared to some of the others. President Selis Agard announces wartime security measures and placid immobilization of reserves. Tribal Council sets up evacuation efforts in Egmar and Vard as precaution against further MR aggression. Good idea. Triglavian forces spotted in Turner recorded analyzing star and transmuter debris cloud. Yeah, so there's Triglavians, Svarog Raznaborg in Turner running around. Pretty nasty fleet of them, too. Amar Court Chamberlain meets with Lords Arim Ardashipur and Araxarum at Consular Palace of Tanu 2. Republic Justice Department adds Captain Marshal Zerdan Sirkosh to most wanted criminals list. I'm telling you, man, Zerdan Sirkosh is one of the most dangerous people in the cluster right now. Leaked documents indicate Lydai Megacorp cooperation with Khanid Kingdom and special scientific projects. This is important because we just got the message, like Khanid was doing their own inspection of one of their AO blue stars, much like the other stars that have been transmuted or have the transmuters. Khanid Kingdom was investigating their own, surveying their own, and now it appears that Lydai and Khanid are working together on a secret project, which tracks. Khanid and Lydai have had a really close relationship forever. Lydai makes Khanid's whip missile systems, for example. That's why the Amar ships have missiles. Tanu is the planet that was bombarded. That's correct. It was part of that, yes. Was it the one that was Titan bombed? Minotaur dreadnoughts. I guess not. Kaha. Ah, right. Got it. But Tanu is basically one of the major capitals of the Amatar. Yeah, capital planet for the Amatar Mandate, an Ardashipur-controlled derelict region. So Ardashipur is the leader of that area. Sorum and Ardashipur have been working together more and more. Honestly, this is kind of suspicious when it comes to the Tetramon comment from earlier, right? Because the Ministry of Internal Order is more like the official Amar, and Tetramon is basically kind of a fanatical group that was outlawed within the Empire for a long time, but held out actually in the Khanid Kingdom and wasn't brought back and legitimized again until Jamil's, right around Jamil's death, and they participated as basically security in the Ascension trials, and then since then they've kind of functioned as a sort of purifier, the Crusades, as it were, internal Crusades, which probably butts up against the MIO. But yeah, so Sorum and Ardashipur have been closely related to Tetramon recently, including Sorum's Silver Hands being involved in, the Silver Hand, I think it was, is involved in the Flossiswin attacks and stuff like that. Inquisition, that's the word. Yes, Inquisition is the word I was looking for. Nobody expects the Tetramon Inquisition. Their chief weapon is surprise. Yes, the Tetramon Order have actually built up a stronghold. That was the first world news that I ever did a reading for, or New Eden news, I should say. Where were we? Valkyr General Kurlafrit of Skarkon Tribal Resistance Army orders STRA support fleets to assist Egmar and Vard refugees. Makes sense. I thought Krilla Freet was no longer referred to as the Valkyr General anymore. Isn't he the one giving the orders to the Mimitar now? Yeah, if anyone's going to go on his Inquisition, it's Saint Tetramon. Yeah, and the Dread attacks and Blood Raider EOM uprisings kind of gave them the justification that they needed to really regain power within the Amar. It's true. I would suggest, again, that you watch my videos and then respond to their points if you're interested in talking about that further. Because a lot of the things that you're saying are just directly dealt with within those videos. All right. Where were we? University of Hedion Eparch Chancellor lodges petition of basilocephaly with Theology Council Courts. That is a word I'm looking up. What does that even mean? Oh my God, it's a word that when I look it up, I mostly get the Eve article. That's not a good sign. Cross-disciplinary application of the microvascular couple. Basilisk King. No. Cephalic. Hold on. It's a veterinary thing. The back of the head becomes flattened, causing the head. That's brachiocephaly. Hold on. Brachiocephaly is a shape of a skull shorter than typical for its species. What? Wild. Are we going like full eugenics now with like skull shapes and shit? Is that what's happening here? I feel like this is relevant because like this University of Hedion is probably another clue to this whole idea of, where was it? The academics that were expelled by Ulkosh. They want to be headed by a king. Well, it's the Galente that are filing this. Short-headed or broad-headed with a cephalic index of over 80. Okay. Did it like translate something wrong? Did I copy and paste it differently? Did it auto correct it? Let me double check that actually. No. Plagiocephaly? What does that mean? Flattened appearance. Bacillocephaly. Did I get it wrong? Oh, wait. No, that's it. That's oh, you're right. I see it. I see it now. I get it. I get it. Yeah. No. I wasn't searching the wrong word. Google decided to try to help me. Got it. Search instead for this. There aren't any terms. Acrocephaly. Pointed skull. Micro. So cephaly means something about the head? Right. They do this a lot. Bacillo. Bacillosaurus. Meaning? Where's it? Kinglet. Okay, yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying. No. Yeah. So they're saying it's the king head. So it's like the same word as basilica. I know Marcus has been trying to tell me this the entire time, but we're walking our way towards it, right? So Basilio is probably from the same root word as basilica. I don't know if that helps anything. But so this is a very weird word. All right. We'll have to keep an eye out on that one, I guess. What is an eparch chancellor? What's an eparch? Oh, a chief bishop. Okay. I just realized something. I'm an idiot. I just realized where some of my flawed thinking was coming from. For some reason, I thought I was confusing Hadrian, University of Hadrian, with Kali, because it was Galente academics. So, no. Hadrian is, of course, the same Hadrian as the Hadrian Decree. So this is an Amarian university. So the Amarian universities, this lord kicks out all of the Galente academics from Hadrian University. And then the University of Hadrian's leader priest lodges a petition of kinghead with the Theology Council courts. Have we pretty much covered that one bullet point now? Can we? Let's see if this guy's come up before. Yeah, he came up a couple days ago. And he came up then? Let's see. Sometimes these ones don't. Lord Aslan Ulkosh reportedly to have ordered levy of vassal houses for imperial troops to garrison throne worlds. So, okay. Who is that guy? Anybody knows who he is? Lord Aslan ul Kosh of Oris orders new investigation of Oris. Of terrorist attacks on planetary holdings, insists on purge of local MIO. Uh-huh. Lord Aslan ul Kosh appointed holder of Oris as powerful minor house of Kosh elevated to direct vassal of imperial throne. So, at the same time as the presidential election was coming under attack, this guy was promoted to the holder of Oris. It's a planet in Amar Prime? Well, I assume that Ulkolsh, I don't know very much about the Amarian naming schemes, and so therefore I can't necessarily say how related to Zerkosh Ulkosh is, but, you know. Orders military census of subordinate fiefs after return from Imperial Tour of Mandate. Uh, oh, it's a planet. Right. There it is. So it's planet 8. It's the planet with the Emperor Family Academy. So it's not a Marn Prime, but it's pretty high up there, right? It's a temperate planet, so it's occupied more likely than not. Very cool. Okay. Next. Edencom monitors Provost in Pochfin reports widespread, large-scale, and rapid increase in Triglavian activity following Turner incident. Now, remember, there was a lot of activity as we built up into the Turner incident. The Triglavians were pulling back into their fortifications, abandoning some of the outlining regions and such. And now there's increased inactivity. I don't know why. We didn't see any reports of any change in Pochfin during the event. However, obviously, the Triglavians are in the system without Pochfin holes connecting to Turner. So it's a bit weird. There's still a lot of unknowns there. But I'm sure we'll find out more as things go on. Kaldari Navy and home and border fleets enhanced by Mega Corporation Security Force squadrons. And Hetman General Kenneth Filmer. Oh, that's who it is. Kenneth Filmer, right. That's the head of the Mimitar. The Mimitar militia. Commends TLF as Republic seeks parity in stellar transmuter technology. So, yeah, the Mimitar have now finished their task, so I guess they have their parity, and that's good. But it'd be really neat if they could like shut down those gates or those transmuters. Okay. I think that's all to talk about here. that pretty much catches us up on what's going on with the story. I'm sure, obviously, there's going to be more tomorrow. But that's about it for this. So tomorrow we are getting the new Navy ships. We're getting these new dreads. We're getting the new destroyers and all that kind of jazz. The thing I really like about the new dreads are fantastic, by the way. I know I haven't really gotten a chance to cover them yet. So they are phenomenal. They focus on... like... one of the things I like about them is that they don't have any additional build costs. They're the same exact build cost as the standard version of the Dread. The only difference is getting the actual BPC itself, which is what costs the LP. So that means that these are going to be relatively reasonable to get and use. The other thing I like about them is that they focus on the E-War of the different races a lot, but also they kind of all function a little bit differently, and there's some pretty interesting balanced relationship between them all. So we'll talk about them a little bit. Then we're actually going to get to the Naglfar last, because it's probably the most complicated. So the Moros Navy issue. The Moros Navy issue has all of the coolness of a Moros. Let me see... Since we don't... Oh, no, that's not the one I want. Hobo Leaks. Let's go to Hobo Leaks real quick. Oh, actually, no. Here, nope, not quite. Almost there. There we go. So the bonuses that it has is it's got its bonus to... Let's look up the actual Moros too while we're here. Moros. So the Moros has a 5% bonus to hybrid damage. And a 5% bonus to rate of fire. This has a 7.5% bonus to damage and a 5% bonus to rate of fire and optimal range. So that optimal range bonus is not on the Moros, and it gets 2.5. So what, 12.5 total percent additional damage from the same from having Max Galente bonus. Yeah, the new dreads are coming from the LP store in Faction Warfare. I'll get to the Phoenix in a second. Now it also has a bonus to armor repper cycle time, which the way that these different dreads work with tank is kind of interesting. It's probably true about the normal dreads too, but given how these are going to be used potentially, it's kind of important. So this has a strong local tank, which is what's going to make this thing... It's kind of designed to try to survive even without external help. Whereas like more of a buffer fit is trying to survive long enough to drop out of siege and get repped by their by the faxes or whatever. This is likely going to make it relatively decent for like being a Hodge Red, right? Like if you're expecting to actually tank the incoming damage, this is a good one. And then this bonus, this 100% total bonus to Warp Scrambler and Warp Disruptor strength and optimal range is pretty nasty. I don't know if this affects the heavy Warp Scrambler. If it does, then that means it's 12 points of scramble 12 points of scramble up to 20 plus kilometers based on boosts. Even without that, it's still 6 to 7 points of Warp Scrambler strength with a Faction Scrambler up to 20 kilometers or more. So that's pretty good at holding something on field. Okay. That pretty much scrams anything that it manages to get hold on. So that's pretty cool. The Caldari Dread. the Caldari Dread has its bonus. The Phoenix, just like the Moros, had its bonus increased from 5% to 7.5%. The resistances, shield resistances, are still applicable, or is still there. There's the same. That makes them a lot better at holding out long enough for reps to land. A 10% reduction in missile reload time was on the original one, but what they gained was this 7.5% bonus to target painter effectiveness. And it was already commented in chat, like, troll face, target painters aren't the Caldari E-War. And you're absolutely correct. Adding jamming bonuses to the Phoenix would be pretty ridiculous for a lot of reasons. So kind of glad that they didn't go with that. But why target painter? Well, it's really simple. The Phoenix Navy issue is the Dread Golem, period. Right? A Golem has a target painter bonus, which makes it insanely good at applying down. A double painter Golem can hit basically everything with torps, like it was just fine. So you get this Phoenix with a target painter or two on it. Suddenly it becomes the best Ha Dread for applying to smaller targets, bar none. Next is the Revelation Navy issue. The Revelation Navy issue had its bonus increased to 7.5 for turret damage. It still has the resistances, which goes back to the fact that the Caldari and the Amar are far more focused on functioning as a fleet, whereas the Mimitar and the Galente are far more about fighting as individuals, or at least the individual contribution, right? The ships themselves don't require very much from each other, but also don't synergize very much with each other either, as much as the Caldari and Galente, or Caldari and Amar. So, it's just like how Amar and Caldari logistics have cap chains, whereas Mimitar and Galente do not. 20 million EHP on a Navy Phoenix issue. That's fun. All right, so Revelation. The activation cost is still there. It has this 125% bonus to energy Nosferatu drain amount and range. That is pretty funny for a few reasons. One, well, mostly because like NOS requires your capacitor to be below their capacitor, right? In order for it to work. So you're not going to newt anybody out with this, right? It's not a bonus to the newt. It's a bonus to NOS. NOS is designed to keep your cap up when under cap pressure. The Revelation is probably one of the most impacted by cap, especially with the lasers. So the idea that this NOS can be used to keep its cap up is kind of delicious. Hey, Mark. Thank you for that. 07. Glad to be on YouTube. Oh, it's a super chat. That's what super chats look like. Sweet. Yeah. So what's fun about this is that the capacitor is the weak point in most capital ships, right? So the fact that the Rev has this NOS bonus means that, assuming that there's some sort of cap or whatever nearby for it to eat off of, and not even that nearby with 125% bonus range, it's going to keep itself go. You can't necessarily drain it out in the same way that you would expect with almost any other cap. It's one of the reasons why the Dagon is such a strong fax. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not the Rev gets used for that purpose. I know that there's the cap bombs for ships or for stations that I think got nerfed, but maybe it'll still hit capitals just fine. Either way, I think that the NOS drain amount is going to be useful because it helps it counter one of the primary weaknesses of capital ships. Void bombs, yeah. So, all right. And then finally, the Naglfar fleet issue, because the Naglfar has actually gotten a few changes while it was live. So let's go through it. First of all, its projectile bonus has been increased from 7.5 or from 5 to 7.5. Its rate of fire is the same. Now, what's weird about this is that the original Naglfar has a shield booster bonus of 5%, whereas the Naglfar fleet issue has a 7.5 bonus to shield booster and armor repairer, which has a couple of interesting implications. First of all, it does mean that the Naglfar fleet issue, much like the Galente fleet issue ship, the Moros fleet issue, or Navy issue, is designed to have its own local tank and survive, right? But what's really crazy about this is that the Naglfar could theoretically, I'm not saying this is a good idea, but you could dual tank, you could dial tank a Naglfar fleet issue and put both shield boosters and armor reppers on it. And it's both bonused, which is really funny to me. And then it has its bonus to heavy stasis grappler. This is actually one of the ones I was really, really glad for. Because when it first came out, it didn't have an E-War bonus like this. And I was kind of curious about that, because this is one of the problems that keeps on happening with Minmatar ships. Because the web bonuses, the enhancements to webs are already owned by other races, right? You can't extend the range of webs because that's Blood Raiders. You can't extend the strength of webs because that's Serpentis. So in every example of Minmatar enhancing their webs, they have to enhance both, right? Which severely limits what ships can be running around with webs, which is why they mostly focus on target painters a lot of the time. But the target painter is already on the Caldari Dread. So what the fuck do you do? Well, the answer is the heavy stasis grappler. So this has 120% bonus for the heavy stasis grappler's fall off range, which is really interesting because a heavy stasis grappler has a really, really, really short optimal range and a really, really, really far fall off range comparatively, right? And it goes out to, I think, double fall off before it shuts off. So like a heavy stasis has like a 3 kilometers, something like that, optimal, but can be used up to 30 kilometers. So with this, it'll be able to be used up past like 50, 60 kilometers, but it'll just get stronger and stronger and stronger as you get closer. So yeah, really interesting dreads. And I think that these are going to be a really, really, really awesome like prize for people participating in faction warfare. The Navy destroyers, the Navy battle cruisers, the Navy exploration ships are great. They're going to be fun to use for various reasons. I for one am going to really enjoy a Catalyst Navy issue, and they did buff the Thrasher fleet issue to give a 15% reduction to microwarp drive signature radius instead of a 10 per skill level. So these things are going to be really cool. But mostly I like them because they function as a really cool, or, a good reward. The better these ships are, the more valuable they are. The more valuable they are, the more valuable the LP that it takes to make them is, which is how we get rewarded in faction warfare. There also has been some pretty cool rebalances to the Navy ships. There has been some of this gone over, but one of the ones that is worth noting was the Galente battleship had its change or had an additional bonus. I think it went from a 5% to a 7.5% on top of everything else. Plus, it has the 7.5 armor repair amount bonus. So, yes, all of the new Navy ships will be unlocked tomorrow, will be purchasable on the LP store. So, it'll probably take a little while. I know that there are people that are already ready to start pumping out these dreads, but the LP that it takes to get these things is incredible. It's like 3 million or something like that. So I don't imagine these things will be rolling off the line in huge numbers right away. As faction warfare picks up in interest, I think that will be a thing. It'll also be important to see how easy it is to build up LP once all of this goes live, right? On the one hand, you can now be in a site with multiple people and everybody gets a full payout. On the other hand, the places that you can get LP is much more restricted, and you no longer get the super amount of LP for having really high tier. Yeah, I'm sure that they'll be building the Navy Dreads literally as fast as they can. But my point is that I don't think that there's that many people with enough LP just kicking around to make that many of them at once. I seriously think that the major bottleneck will be people having enough LP to buy the BPCs. So there are definitely some people that have it, but there's a few people with a lot of LP. I'll put it that way. But again, we'll have to see how LP generation works, how popular, how successful the expansion is, how many new players come in, what that means for faction warfare, all that sort of stuff. Because remember, like, people talk about whether or not this faction warfare will attract players from other places. Like, well, people from Null check out faction warfare. Honestly, I don't give a shit about that, right? Like, people have made their choices and about where they want to be in EVE. The point is that new players will be brought into the game from this expansion. They'll be given a much, much, much better new player experience than anything we've ever seen before. And that new player experience leads them towards faction warfare, among other things. So with this live living event thing going on, there's constant news that's related to these factions. There's things happening in faction warfare space. I imagine that the majority of increase in our numbers of our population are going to come from people that aren't playing the game today. People that started the game tomorrow and beyond. Yeah, so the way it works is that it's kind of like the Triglavian sites are, where up to a certain number, everybody gets the full amount, and then after that, it gets divided between the people. Ironically, I think that the Navy issue the Phoenix and the Rev, the Phoenix is probably the one that probably has the most LP built up already, right? Because the Caldari have been most recently just powering through, and a lot of people joined the Caldari specifically to make money. So I would say of all four empires, the empire that probably has the ability to pump out their dreads soonest in quantity will be the state. The Phoenix is almost certainly going to be the best solo dread for you. Like, yeah, for what was it called? There was a name for it. Like, people cowboying it out with like you have Hodred that goes really fast and then hits the siege, so that way it's sliding. Man, there's a name for this. Oh well. I wonder how Navy Dreads will affect Wormhole Captain gameplay. I think that the Revelation Navy issue will be pretty damn good against sleepers, right? Because they can't get capped out. Was it drive-by? It's drifting. Yeah, it was drifting your dreads. I think it was just there was a guy who was known as the fastest dread in the north, right? Wasn't that what it was? There's like a couple of people that in particular that were well known for it, probably. Crab sites. Crab sites will be pretty good. Yeah, CCP wanted to make LP taxable, but I think that seems to be one of those things that didn't manage to make it yet. And unlike the Allegiance system, they haven't necessarily suggested that that's going to change. So I know that some of the CSM people were saying that they're disappointed that certain things that they were hoping were going to be able to make it into the expansion weren't feasible. And I wonder whether or not that's part of it, if they're going to fix it with Allegiance or what. It's also worth noting that we're getting the new hangars, we're getting new audio and turrets, we're getting the new ships, we're getting the Abyss and ganking changes, we're getting logos, Alliance and Corporation logos for our ship, and ability to start building up Everbucks, which I can't believe that they went with the name Everbucks, right? Like, that's cool. Didn't they? Is that what they did? Hold on. Evermark, right? Yeah, Evermarks. That's what it is. Evermarks. Yes, we're getting the new hangars tomorrow, but it's only in structures, player structures. Paragon points. Hell yeah. No, Paragon points are the new battle pass. Oh shit. I would unironically like Eve to have a battle pass system if it was done correct, like not in a shitty way. But I digress. That's true. The trailer, I'm really excited about the trailer. The teaser trailer was already pretty good. I wonder what they're going to show off to help explain to people what the hell has been happening and about to happen. Let me show you the new hangars. These videos are pretty cool too. They made little videos for all of the different Navy issue ships that were coming out. The first set, at least. I know the Twitter has it, if not. Yeah, here we go. So these are the new hangars. And what's cool is that you'll be able to see multiple of your ships. And like when you switch ships, it just pans the camera from one ship to the other. Yeah, battle pass usually means like, yeah, it's like a seasonal. Imagine if events had many more tasks that you can do to gain points, like 10 to 12, but you have to earn more points. You have to get it over a short period of time, and there's 2 rewards to earn. One track of rewards only get earned if you pay the money, right? So you can unlock Battle Pass level 8 and get all of the rewards 1 through level 8. But then if you pay for the Battle Pass, you then get all of the premium rewards 1 through 8. Does that make sense? And then every season, chunk of time, whatever, they reset it. In Echoes, it's known as Concord points, I think it is. The point is that I want rewards for tasks, and I want it to change it up every once in a while. That's all I'm asking for. Just because I want to be able to be like, oh, what should I do today? Oh, yeah, I can tick this box. That's why I love the new air system. Yeah. Um, Obviously, the charging the money for it would be like premium skins and stuff like that, right? Like it wouldn't be a real like it'd be the same rules as buying anything else. The air system it lasts a long time now. Like it's going to take a person a while to complete all of these tasks, right? Like um well, they can do a bunch of mining stuff if they wanted to. But this is just industrialists, right? So you got to do some salvaging, you got to do some market, you got to do some research, all that, whatever. If you go down to the Soldier of Fortune, it gets even more complicated, right? Like I need to complete these things. So killing enemies with different ship types, um, using electronic warfare. I've already seen some people running around like new bros trying to complete because this is a relatively easy set of tasks, right? So, okay, well, go complete a novice complex, go defend a novice complex, go complete a level 1 faction warfare mission, right? Like, and the rewards for these things are pretty significant. It's like 500,000 SP. Yeah, sorry, 100,000 SP per one, plus a bunch of really cool skins. The Soldier of Fortune one, which is the PvP one, has the um, is this one. This is what they get for unlocking it, which is pretty cool. It says Soldier of Fortune on the side. I mean, it gives me reason to go back through them and unlock them all. Yeah. A lot of people think that the air career system is just the career agents, but they've actually added in a ton. Like this will give you at least a month worth of content. If you can get through this and not know what you want to do next, then I don't know, man. Like the number one reason why people quit the game is because they don't know what to do. This at least gives you things to do. This tells you all of the different things you can do. This tells you all of the different ways that you could advance yourself, right? Oh, okay. Well, what is Abyssal Dead Space? Why do I only have 1 out of 4? Whatever. Fuck it. Yeah. So my point is that this gives people enough direction to get them to start walking down the road. So it isn't about being handheld. The thing is that like we say, okay, well, you can do whatever you want. Okay, well, but here's my take on that. Here's what I have to say about people that respond with, well, you can do whatever you want, Neve. First of all, you're lying. You can't. You can only do what the rules actually allow you to do. You know, I can't turn you into a cake. I can't bake a cake, right? Like, I can't do whatever I want. But number two, it's a cop out. It is a cop out answer. Given number one, number two, or the actual answer itself is a complete cop out because it's a non answer. Well, what should I do? Whatever you want. That doesn't fucking give them anything, right? So by doing this, this allows them to at least see what there is to do, right? And then they can decide what they want to engage with or not. You're allowing players to forge their own path rather than setting them out in the middle of the woods at night with no compass or flashlight and, you know, being like, hey, by the way, there's wolves, good luck, and running away, right? Like, it's people conflate CCP giving you guys tasks as CCP demanding you do those tasks. But by giving you the task, you now get the choice to do it or refuse to do it. Whereas that choice didn't exist until they gave you the task. Did you try to bake a cake? I admittedly I haven't tried. I don't even know. Hell, who knows? Maybe it's a secret feature that I just have never been aware of. Right. Optional paths. It's just like the latest events, right? It's not saying that you have to get involved in faction warfare. Hell, you didn't even need to get into faction warfare to do any of this stuff. That was one of the things that a lot of people missed. But none of it says that you have to go help build the gate. The empires are asking you to come help build the gate, but you decide what you want to do about that request. If that request was never made, there's no decision to be made. But by simply asking you guys to help, you are now able to decide whether or not you want to advance the empire's, whatever your chosen empire's is goal or not. Nobody made me fly into a solar flare. Yeah. This also actually, I was watching a video. Is that not going to do it? Really? Huh. I feel like one of these sliders should change how loud it is out there, right? Like at the very least, world should, right? Hmm. I think the next step for Air Career Program should be something even bigger rewards for advancing in some fields. Like, for example, you complete the Enforcer Path. I'd love to get rewards. You do. Oh, you mean like a tier 2 where it's not, or like a stage 2 where it's like you completed the first one. Astronauts especially baked cake. But here's like the harder version, right? I think that that's fine, but I actually don't think that that's necessary. Because once you get the person in there running tier 0, within a couple, like you allow the natural tendency to want to advance to kick in, right? You don't actually need to encourage them to move up to the tiers, because once they get into tier 0, then on a long enough timeline, they will naturally convince themselves to move up the tiers. Spaceboat sends blessings. Hey! Thank you. Man, I love faction warfare back in living in Asakai, but there was so many bots. Yeah. The thing is that, like, the thing about bots, and more importantly, what I like to refer to as cockroaches, which are players, or any pilot in faction warfare that is running sites without the intent of like taking fights, but just like farming for SP, right? And that's all they ever do. I call those guys cockroaches. First of all, because they're feeding off of the detritus of everyone else. But also because the solution to cockroaches, the solution to bots and players that do this is the same as it is with cockroaches, which is turn on the light, watch them scatter, right? The bots can only plex where there's no one contesting them. And the problem with the old system is that every system basically is perfectly fine to plex in. With the new Warzone system, it's actually going to severely restrict which systems they can run sites in and still get rewarded, which means that there's more likelihood that bots will be interfered by other people, which is going to make them less effective. With less systems in play at any given time, that's going to make it harder for the bots to actually find good places for them to run. The best way to deal with them is to just have real people plexing those same systems. I would say that EVE Online is a simulation first, honestly. And that the social interactions spring naturally from that. But it's the preservation of the simulation and the story. It's funny, JK, that you're bringing this up about the social aspects of it. I'm assuming it's part of your defense against ganking, because the entire concept of the friendship machine is about the impact of negative events, negative outside pressures, and their ability to help forge stronger friendships, right? The guy who doesn't have to worry about being ganked or interfered with at all doesn't need a group of people to learn from, to hang out with, and to work with. That it is actually the act of dealing with the negative thing, the being evicted, the having your structures, the war deck, all that kind of stuff, that actually becomes critical to the concept of the friendship machine. Am I the only one that thinks that jump from T0 to T1 Abyss is a bit too high for new bros? I don't know. I guess I have a difficult time chewing on that because I grew up where T1 was the lowest. So I used to teach new bros on T1, not T0. I think that your early days of the Abyss needs to be deadly as fuck. Right? I'm perfectly happy with tier 1 and tier 0 being hard for a player with low skill points and low ship skills, because that's what's actually going to teach them. Because the same exact problems are going to cause them to die when they get better ships and better levels. It's the same exact thing. And if you know how to deal with it, then you know how to deal with it correctly. So getting these people to get out there, experience these mistakes, get killed, learn from them, and become better while they're still using cheap, barely functional T1 frigates or destroyers, I think is actually, that's optimal, right? I don't want people losing their first Abyss ship because they stepped their Gila up to T4, Tier 5 because they thought that all they had to do was increase their DPS and they didn't have to worry about a cap battery, right? I recommend you go watch CCP's videos on the friendship machine and any of the lectures by CCP Ghost from like 2019 and on. I actually don't think that Eve is always going to be small. There's no functional reason why Eve has to be niche, in my opinion. I think that I'll be straight up, okay? I think that Eve is a niche game because it's a bad game. Or it was a bad game. Like, Eve wasn't a niche game because only the right kind of people have what it takes to live in Eve. There's activities in Eve for all kinds of different people. Right? Eve wasn't a popular game because Eve itself was just functionally bad. Between bad UI, bad training, bad direction, bad content outside of player stuff, but like dead ends and boring gameplay. Like that's why Eve was niche. It didn't direct you to anything. Nothing taught you how to do anything. And on top of it all, it also was hardcore PvP. I think that that is what limited Eve more than anything else. And I think that trying to suggest that Eve is inherently a niche game, I think it's a bit disingenuous because, again, I go back to Dark Souls and other games like that. Like, there is a strong drive within the gaming culture for a hard but fair gameplay. I just do I report? All right, I think that works. Where was I? Well, yeah. So my point is, Eve, you do have to make your own game, but the game that you make is how you interact with the systems. That's how you make the game, right? That's like saying that art is about the 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 thing that you create. Like you got to create the art yourself. Well, yes, that's obviously true. But what medium you choose to use, what tools it has, whether or not they're easy to interface with, the restrictions and there's pros and cons to different kinds of paint, different kinds of mediums, different kinds of you can use technology, you could draw on a drawing tablet, right? All of that influences both how the art turns out, but more importantly, the art that comes as the final result stems from the interaction of the artist with the tools that the artist is using, right? And so in the same way, EVE Online needs to give us the tools to create our stories. And one of those tools are things to key in on, tasks to be motivated by or reject, causes to forward or stymie, challenges to overcome or to ignore. The game can't fix your personal attributes. I actually disagree with that in a weird way, because a lot of the skills that you require in Eve are real life skills, right? So one of the things I think is really awesome about EVE Online is that it allows us to experiment with real things, right? Like one of the reasons why I double down on Eve so many times is because it's like, well, I want to develop my leadership skills. I want to develop my video editing skills. I want to develop my streaming skills. I want to develop my organizational skills. I want to develop my ability to throw a contest. I want to be able to, influencing media. I want to know how to influence people. I want to deal with, business transactions and monitoring, I want to get better at all these kinds of crazy skills. But all of these things are the kind of things that if you mess it up in real life, it can be very, very painful. So Eve functions as a place to learn and develop and practice and fail at and get better with a lot of those soft skills. Strongly advise never going to Reddit for much of anything. I like Reddit a lot. I have a very actively curated Reddit with multiple multi-Reddits for multiple purposes. Reddit is a reflection of the people that are participating in it. So there are definitely some subreddits that are uh, garbage, and there are definitely some subreddits that are phenomenal. And there's some awesome things that get done on Reddit, and things to participate in. So it's true that competitive online games have a tendency to be more toxic on Reddit than other games. I think that part of the problem is the fact that the metagame, the our communications outside of the game is still part of the game because we're all playing the same game. So control of the narrative is a strong component of the game. So our Reddit isn't just about communicating information, it's about controlling information. And I think that that changes the Eve subreddit pretty significantly, and without serious considerations to that effect, and therefore trying to mitigate the risk of that, it's just going to be a defining feature. And given the fact that the mod team isn't really interested in that, yeah, I think that it's unfortunate that the r/Eve subreddit isn't that great. Now, there has been some poking around about like making another subreddit that has better information, and I've kind of poked at it myself. Definitely would need more people to make it happen because I'm trying to do enough things as it is. But it's not. My issue is that Reddit, regardless of how much we don't want to like it, is by far one of the best sources of getting information out there. More people are looking on Reddit for news than any other place in period. When if I put up a video, like I learned this back in the not talking stations, but back in the Matani.com days, right? A post that's posted on Reddit, even if it gets downvoted, gets like 1,000 extra views over anything, over one that isn't. There's no single, it is the biggest single place of social media that you can place something to get eyes on it. And that is even if it gets downvoted. Okay? So the issue is that we can write off Reddit, but that's where people naturally go. And as I mentioned, Reddit is controlled by the people that are participating. So if everyone decent doesn't use Reddit and therefore doesn't vote on Reddit, that means that Reddit is left to the people that do engage with it. And they set the tone for those thousands of people that go and check out the subreddit for news every day. So it's hard. It's a hard one. Now, one of the things I do find encouraging is that there was a really funny post on Reddit, I think today, which was like, hey, where did all the Eve are dying posts go? So even r/Eve has noticed that this expansion is becoming kind of popular. And on top of that, I found it really interesting that one of the things that one of the responses that he got was, well, when CCP releases new ships and stuff, that's what you get. Which is funny because like 2 weeks ago, I was told the Navy ships aren't new ships. All right. That's enough for Reddit. Okay. Even downvotes create interest. What didn't people like? I'm just saying, like, the point is that even if it gets downvoted, it's just its presence being on the subreddit. Like when people go to r/Eve, they'll still see it, even if it gets downvoted, given that it's new-ish. You'll still get it. Now, if it gets upvoted, it has a lot of, that's a big effect. Also, people on r/Eve don't downvote correctly. They don't use their votes correctly. Upvoting and downvoting are supposed to be about the appropriateness or relevantness of the link, not necessarily how much you agree with it. So the fact that people like downvote change announcements because they don't like the change is like one of my biggest pet peeves, because you should only downvote something if it's not appropriate for the subreddit. That's actually within Reddit's rules, but r/Eve promotes a different way of looking at it pretty actively. all you know, Arazith, all I'll say is that like Eve challenges us both as pilots and gamers, but also socially, and not everybody succeeds. And one of the things is that I do see people that complain loudly, usually about things that aren't even necessarily even true anymore, showing off that they haven't necessarily played in a long time, but they're just kind of mad. Um, and to a certain extent, like, yeah, not everybody wins. Not everybody figures out how to handle Eve Online, and that is kind of what it looks like when somebody's dying in Eve, right? You didn't know that that's a rule on Reddit? Yeah, if you go look at Reddit, that's what they say. Downvoting is for things that are inappropriate or not supposed to be in that subreddit, not just because you don't like the opinion. Now, comments, all bets are off mostly, but at least on the top level Reddit posts, like people that downvote Eve news on Reddit deserve a special place in Reddit hell, in my opinion, because it's like legitimate information about Eve is being lost because a bunch of people are butthurt. But the good news is, we may be through it. We may be past it. We might be finally fucking over. And we now live in a new era where there's an expansion and we can move forward, and people might even start posting about Eve uh, as like the game, and put content about things that they're seeing and finding and all that stuff. Turner did get a lot of people's attention. It's true. Is there a Dom Reddit? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but almost certainly yes. Soloing in Eve is absolutely possible. It's just, as with all of these things, you have to ask yourself you have to have a reasonable expectation about what you're going to be able to do, right? It's it's just like ship fits, right? If you have only one parameter, it's usually pretty easy to fulfill it, right? I want to fly a Stratios. Well, okay, well, in that case, here's a fit for, Stratios exploration or whatever, right? Oh, well, I didn't want to do that. I want to run the Stratios in the Abyss. Well, now you have two different constraints, right? I want to do a Stratios and I want to run the Abyss. The more constraints, the more likely you're going to end up with a situation where it just doesn't mesh up. And so now you're walking off the beaten path, which you're totally free to do, but just realize that you are, right? Like, so likewise, you can be a solo player of Eve perfectly fine. But if you want to do T2 reactions from scratch, including mining the moons, you're going to be a little bit challenged to do all of that solo. You're free to try, but you can't get mad that T2 reactions are too complicated for a single person, because there are content for single people and there are content for groups. Yeah, that's true. Gory Xander actually did that, and there has been other people that have done this kind of thing where it's an Iron Man challenge where you're completely cut off from everybody else. Now, are you going to become like the giant badass of everybody? No, because you've just put yourself in a giant fucking constriction. You're doing it for the constriction, or the constraint, right? Like, you're doing it to be able to say that you did it. I know a lot of people that their entire game of Eve is that after a week of work, they just want to come home and sit there and listen to their mining laser buzz while they relax and drink some probably expensive alcohol, right? Like, that is more than an insignificant amount of people's Eve Online. I like running on. I like logging on and running a mission or two. Like, why do I do anything in any video game? Why do I play Hollow Knight again? Because just like playing it. Nobody chooses for you. Nobody chooses for you at all. You're free to do whatever the hell you want, man. If you want to go out there and mine in a Vexer, they even have bonuses. You should get mixed suspect. I would like to suggest that my paladin is a while I am definitely one of those people that are strongly on the side of Abyss is not perfectly safe. Get wrecked. Um, I will definitely say that um, you are far more exposed in a Marauder doing a mission than you are in the Abyss. Yeah, you just described my old corp. 250 old dudes drinking and mining all day. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I say that mining is the fishing of Eve. And I don't even say that as an insult. Like if you're doing it at the end of the week with a beer in your hand and your buddies on comms, then it's a good time. If you're doing it by yourself or because you're doing it to try to pay your bills and or you're trying to do it just to pay your bills, then it's going to be stressful and miserable. Just getting an example of the community response. Nobody's telling you what you have to do. No one is telling you what you have to do, man. You're interpreting that. As I've said many times, Eve Online is a video game about the practical application of bad ideas. Just because somebody says that something is a bad idea doesn't necessarily mean that it's the wrong thing to do. Hey man, if it helps you process everything, then excellent. Excellent. As long as you're willing to accept the fact that it may not necessarily be as bad as your perception makes it. And that's okay. Yeah, there has been it has not been a easy year, or it's not been an easy couple of years. I'm just very glad that we're one day away. All right. I was going to talk about faction warfare space and lowsec and all that stuff, but now I don't feel like I have a lot of time to do that. I'll probably do it tomorrow some, as we will have a new faction warfare to check out. Will they bump T6 loot? Because they really bumped risk. So what's interesting about that abyssal space is that outside of red loot, abyssal loot is 100% market dictated, right? So over 2/3 of the value of the run is dictated on market. Market is dictated on supply and demand. Supply is dictated by how many people can run them however easily. The more constraints, the more blocks in the way, the less people that are going to be running it. The less people that are running it, the more the same rewards will be worth. It's worth noting that right now, most of the stuff that comes out of the Abyss is worth like half as much as it used to be worth. So now some of that has to do with just overall saturation over time. But the point is that even if they don't change what loot drops in T6 Abyss at all, you should see an increase in reward. Just like you saw an increase, like people kept on saying that scarcity was bad for miners or new bros, right? The new bros that are mining Veldspar, guess what? That Veldspar actually is now worth more than it was before. Their time is actually worth more because the rocks that they're mining are worth more because they're not competing with rock walls all day for the same resources brought to market. So I'm not saying that's going to solve all the problems. I also don't know how it is right now balanced between T6 Abyss and other money-making activities. We're just gonna have to see how that plays out. But I'm just saying, like, this change is going to influence the value of the things that come out of the abyss as well. In addition to that, if they bring back Triglavian stuff in invasions, the more invasion Triglavian stuff is involved, the more T2 becomes practical to build. The more T2 becomes practical to build, the more the T1 stuff is required. So if they were to do more stuff with it, Pochvin and the Triglavians and stuff, which they've already started to dabble with in Turner, anytime that you're adding more Triglavian salvage to the pool, you're actually also increasing the relative value of the stuff that comes out of the abyss. Nobody said the game was good. In fact, I believe that I said that the game was unpopular because it was bad. Wait, but who burns? In where? What? What did I just say? I don't know what I just said. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, Eve is overwhelming. That's true. It's getting better. I like this site. I gotta say. Oh, Turner 1 residents that were burned. I speculated this earlier. I would not be surprised if it was revealed eventually that that entire colony or that entire group of people mysteriously appears on some Triglavian system or on some Triglavian in some Triglavian facility. A few years back, the Triglavians kidnapped an entire city down to a molecular level. So if they have like a transportation system, if they're able to rip biological material away from non-biological material on a molecular level, it could be that there was a plan by the Absolver to be raptured, as it were, by the Triglavians. Their souls are in the rings around Turner 1. Well, yeah, or that. That's also an option. That's another interpretation of the situation. That's true. I will, yes. There are definitely some problems in Eve's design, in particular when it comes to the social aspects of things. I think that a lot of it's getting better. I think that the Eve community has changed a lot in the last half a decade. And what was considered unthinkable 5 years ago is kind of like 5 years ago, people were threatening CCP if they would make a certain change. And now people are complaining that that change wasn't made, right? A good example of this is when the original achievement system, the activity tracker, was released. Players were incredibly adamant that it could provide zero reward. They didn't want any sense that they were being pushed into anything. And CCP went along with that. There was this theory. This is why a lot of the events didn't really have that much of a story behind it beyond just the site, because they didn't want to tell you why you were doing what you were doing or anything like that, right? Like, they didn't want to give you any context that you might not accept, because the player base was adamant that they didn't want CCP providing those things. And now players are like, what the fuck? Why is there no, progress track? Why is there no direction? Why is there no, players used to complain that CCP shouldn't do anything lore wise, that it's all about the players. And now people are like, well, why is there no interesting story? Why can't I find out more about the Cosmos missions? The entire player base mentality has changed. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the internet and our culture has changed, right? A lot I've said this many times on my streams. A lot has happened since Gamergate, right? Like, I mean, we have just changed as a society. The toxicity within the community now versus in 2000. In 2011, people argued that CCP should let a person use Eve to hunt for people to harass and psychologically torture in TeamSpeak. That should not be dealt with by CCP, that they should just let this happen because it's a sandbox. That is how far we have come from 2011. I vote more Dread Tax than New Eden Shenanigans. I mean, a star blowing up was pretty good. You don't remember such a thing from 2011? I recommend you look up Erotica 1. I have a video on it, actually. Eve has a lot of new players, but my point is that these new players have a different expectation about what is Eve. Players used to gatekeep Eve very seriously, right? Especially when, like, the war deck, before the war deck changes, non-PvPer voices were just not heard because if you spoke out, then you were bullied and picked on. So, like, the only people who had control of the narrative were the most aggressive people. So the killers managed to have control over the narrative, and what that resulted in is a game that was very hostile to achiever-based gameplay. I know I've slipped into Bartle taxonomy without really introducing it, but and so we just didn't see very much achievers. We didn't see that game style evolve. That entire player base looked at EVE Online and didn't see a game for them. And that's too bad, because these are the exact people that, if you give them the tools to get into it, are the ones that'll dig into it the deepest. That'll push themselves, become the best pilots. I don't think that CCP or EVE Online had a low retention because only a special breed of people like EVE Online. I think that we were losing the best players that we could have. I think that the best players that we could have checked out EVE and saw that it wasn't good enough for them. The thing I want from this expansion, CCP wins if, when this expansion comes out, the buzz around the internet is, hey guys, EVE Online is fun now. EVE Online can be played by the outside people now. EVE Online has a game to it now, besides just people being dicks to each other. If that message can get being sent around, if that is the thing that gets echoed around the gaming zeitgeist, this game, we are all the minority. Congratulations. We are living in the last day of the before times, the long, long ago, the shitty old past. If that happens, we could see a change in the population of EVE unlike anything we have ever seen before. And to be honest, we're poised to be able to do that. So I'm really excited, and I will be doing it with you guys starting tomorrow, streaming on YouTube from now on. If you want to support the stream, we've got super chats and super stickers and all that kind of stuff, as well as joining as a member. If you join as a member, you get the emotes, and the more people that join as a member, the more emotes get unlocked. Also, members are going to be get the polls and videos. Like maybe I'm going to be putting up videos that are member only. Like maybe full records of streams will be for the members, and then the short version. Yes, and the store is up. We're going to work today to wire everything up so that way you'll be able to get it through YouTube. So pay attention. By tomorrow, hopefully you'll be able to buy merch if you want to too. So there's all that. If you have been thinking about checking out EVE Online, like I said, I put out a video today called The Spicy Take on Faction Warfare, or Defensive Faction Warfare. If you've been thinking about EVE Online, if you've played EVE Online before and left, if you thought that the nullsec blocks were just too much drama, if you couldn't get enough good PvP fights, if you never felt like you could get advanced, if you never felt that you could do PvP because it cost too much, if you ever felt that you didn't have a place where you could learn the game or anything like that, if you thought that the game was just too complicated, required too much work to get anything done, or wasn't fun because you couldn't get fights, let me tell you, now is the time to come check out EVE. Get involved, check out Faction Warfare, buy into it. As I said in the previous video, you get out of it what you put into it. Buy into it. Pick a side. Pick an objective. Hold to it. Other people are going to stop you or try to stop you. Fight them. Get that, make sure that your objectives get done. Allow yourself, distract your enemies. You're going to lose, you're going to win, but keep your eyes on your goal. Help your team. Help your objectives. Have a point to things. Become invested. The reason why Aderon Robotics is in Fliet and not Yvonne is because when we moved to Yvonne, which is outside of the war zone, our activity dropped by 1/3 overnight. There was no skin in the game. Same thing, same rules, same fight, same plexes, same world. But we no longer had to fight to survive. And so most people just didn't. If you find EVE boring, if you find that there's no directions, guess what? One's being laid out for you, and give it a shot. If you haven't ever used EVE, if you need an account, or if you've got less than 1 million SP, please use my buddy code and get 1 million free SP. It's 40 days of training. As an alpha, alphas are perfect for faction warfare. And the new faction warfare sites are going to be restricted such that it'll even be a bigger advantage. So that way you can make sure that there won't be pirate ships coming in to pick on you, but only T1 and faction. With, of course, you being able to build those Navy faction ships yourself with your LP. So there's this nice advantage, or there's this nice growth, whatever. So come check out EVE. Come check out EVE again. Come check out Faction Warfare. And either way, I will see you tomorrow in Uprising. All right. If you want to support what I do, make sure to follow and check out my YouTube stuff. I also made a game called Playton. It is a real-time puzzle game. Yes, you can still use your 2 billion snake pot in a rookie plex. Correct. I strongly advise a slicer. I mean, a secure 1.0 would have some pretty dramatic impacts. Ganking in Jita is a very big thing. And the concern would be that people would... The problem is that that would create a temptation and drive and impulse and pressure to accept lower ISK to be able to fly your ships in safety, right? So I think that it would... This goes back to the fact that I sincerely believe that most of the people that complain about ganking, it would be your gameplay that would be robbed if ganking were removed. Because that's like saying that, like, enemies respawning in Dark Souls is problematic because you just want to get back to the boss. Well, of course you do, but I mean, like, it's still part of the challenge. It's part of the thing that's piece of it. So, I guess I just don't see the point. Mickey Boo has shown that several times that Jita ganks are made by bots. I'm sure that some Jita ganks are made by bots. that doesn't mean that all Jita ganks are made by bots. I don't think I'm just going to go on a limb and say I don't think that new players being killed in ships other than Ventures is a serious problem right now. I don't think it's happening very much. I don't see very many people complaining that their level 2 mission their level 2 mission was ganked. If ganking went away, would Eve be destroyed? It would be altered inexorably. It would change the game on a fundamental level. It would take some time for that to fully play out. I think it would be more that change would... I hate to say this. I'm going to make a slippery slope style argument, but I'm not saying that like, oh, well then next thing you know, they're going to want this. It changes the game in such a way that it will necessitate further changes that will take it further and further and further away from what it is. Will it destroy it? I don't know. It'll destroy what it is. It'll be a new thing, which might be fine. But Echoes is a pretty big warning for sure. It would be a very different game. It would, though. It would. But that's actually an interesting conversation, an interesting thought experiment that I think we should really unpack at some point. Because it would really change the game. I don't think that should be argued. I think that the argument would be, would that change be better? Would that version of Eve be a better game? And because the reason why I'm saying that it would change it, and the reason why I would say that it would necessitate further changes, is because in order to be able to make that change, you would have to change some fundamental principles by which EVE Online is built, right? Like, it is, however you want to look at it, it is an erosion of death as a serious matter, right? It is a step away from the pure Eve, which we still don't have. Like, we don't have the pristine version of Eve. The pure version, because stations are safe, right? But it is always about finding that balance, and certain things get eroded. Citadels and structures fundamentally changed EVE Online by changing the rules about safety, by changing the rules about cloning, by changing the rules of industry, by changing in a lot of little ways. And so could you say that Citadel or structures ruin the game? No. But at the same time, we are now having to go back and address a lot of the changes that were problematic from structures. So that's what I mean by it would change it on a fundamental level. Not that it would be like a totally different game overnight, but it would make it a different game when evaluating future design decisions. Now, you could do things to mitigate it, like move mission agents around and blah, 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 blah. I think that there is an argument to be made about additional safety. I still think that the idea of, like, as a new player, you have up to 30 days of absolute safety unless you turn off your safety, go into a dangerous area, or... I don't know, maybe there'll be other things like jump in a T2 ship or something like that. But the point is that there could be a way to offer a protection such that even if it was to be exploited, that exploit would not be as useful as just other standard methods of doing things, right? So I would much rather see something like that looked at than something that's based on 1.0 security. I think that they should Edencom Fortress every 1.0 security system. And I think that total safety would be supported in rookie spawn systems. Well, it's already against the rules to do that stuff in rookie systems. So yeah, I mean, obviously it would be fine to put in that. At that point, it would just be, is it worth is it a big enough problem to be worth the additional work it would take to make it happen? Right? Right. Rules are easy to make. Systems take development effort. Okay. I've been Ashtrathi. I've been playing this game since 2010 and talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put even the context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys for coming and watching and check it out. Well, then report it and get them in trouble. If you want to help make sure that this happens, you can go ahead and support me by becoming a member on YouTube, or you can join my Patreon. That's not even right. Patreon. There you go. And then you can join these wonderful people, including Abyssus, Jaykoon, Jenny, Alanje, Fatewinder, Katoba Manic, Faisal, Seeds of Plenty, Davulje, Lars Hain, Gragnor, Yellowclad King, my co-designers, Eridanika the Queen, Black Rose Noble, Dejat Lamont, Midnight Space Monkey, Not Just Fun, Serenolin with No Eyes, Ciliana Velesh, Talking in Stations, Nephilim, Grendel, and Zal Nex, as well as my immortal patron, Ebo Leet, and my big thanks to Eridanika, who's been helping manage things for me, at least a little bit. And thank you to all of you guys who have participated and who were mods in my in Twitch and supported me over there and all that stuff, and people that have been trying to keep the peace today. If you need me to set up mods again, then just get in touch with me and we'll get things settled and figured out. Excellent. I'm glad about that, Landon. All right. Well, I can't rate anybody. How do you end streams on YouTube? I mean, I know how to like physically end the stream, but like, is there a raid function? I think this is just it, right? All right. Well, in that case, until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking ship. every city.